Thank you all for joining us today. Welcome to the Product Management Special Interest Group Power Hour with WBW powered by Akraya. I'm Meenu, one of your hosts, and along with Karen, who is my co-host here. And we are thrilled to launch our new speaker series. So this is our second session for the speaker series for the product management, where we'll have the opportunity to work with the product leaders, listen to them, hear their topics, their journeys into product management, how they have traversed through to being where they are right now, current trends in the industry, and what they look in their PM hires. The format of today's session will be conversational, learning about, we have Amith Ronad, and he will be learning about his journey into product management, and we will make it conversational. He will, like he mentioned, he will be stopping after every topic, looking up for questions if we have, and we'll try to be with the topics. And if you have additional questions from the audience, like if we are running short on time, then we'll probably postpone the questions towards the end. And we'll try to let him answer all of the questions that have been asked. But if something gets missed, we will make sure that we get those answers to you. Please raise your hands, or maybe, just drop your question in a chat, and one of us will be able to take up the question with Amith. Little about our group. Our members come from diverse backgrounds and have a range of experience. We have aspiring PMs who they are people who are moving into product management or who are thinking about moving into product management. And we have PMs with 6 to 10 years of experience who have already had experience, but have had some gaps in there and are looking to come back to the same industry. We have women with advanced degrees in computer science, business, engineering. We have worked at leading companies. Some are Cisco, Visa, Meta, Bank of America. Our career breaks have been anywhere between 6 months, 1 year, to 15 years. So what we have all in common is that we are all looking to get back to work in this. We know how the industry is right now into product management and PM adjacent roles. So if you think that you're not looking to be an aspiring PM, or you've not been PM in the past, probably this is not the group for you, and you can probably switch back to the Tuesday Power Hour session. But here, because we'll be focused mainly on product management here. Karen, my co-host, can you please introduce us to our speaker today?
Thanks, Meenu. Yes, I am pleased to introduce Amith Ronad. Amith, thank you so much for being here with us today. Amith is a senior product manager at Cisco. He's working on the software side of IoT products. He has over a decade of experience at Cisco, starting out as a network engineer and then spending several years on the engineering side of the business, and then transitioning into product. And he transitioned into product about 5 years ago. So Amith, we are so excited to hear about your journey and to get some valuable interview tips as well. So I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Meenu, and thanks, Karen. I'm very excited to be part of this session today. I'm very happy to help you guys in any way I can. And especially from my experience, I think we do need more women in product management. And I hope through this session, you'll get a chance to crack some of the interviews that you might have lined up. About myself, already Karen has spoken a lot. I don't want to take more of your time explaining about myself, other than the fact that I am a Bay Area resident. I live with my wife and a 3-year-old, lovely daughter here. With that, we can get started. All right. Okay, so a few things up front. I would like to clarify that I don't have any agenda for this session. I don't have an agenda slide, just because this session is all about questions. I want you guys to make the most out of it by asking any questions you might have. And whenever you have questions, please do put them in the chat, or you can also raise your hand, and we'll take those questions, as many as I can. And I'll also try to put in some time at the end so we can address those questions as well. From the the session itself, I'll be talking mainly about the interview prep, the questions that you might expect to see in your interviews, strategy on how to address some of them. I will not be going deep dive into how to address those questions in detail. So that's something that I will be able to
She
do.
can provide me for the ones that we are asking for, basically with the image and then the text. Yeah,
Sorry,
sounds good. Yeah.
you guys.
Somebody is on.
So Shefali,
Could you please mute
I don't
yourself?
think you would be able to do this. And Aaron, I think you have to also do this.
I think Shri, a person like Shri, yeah. And Sindhu is not muted. If we can mute them. Yeah, thank
Right.
you.
Thanks. All right, and finally, I'll be using a lot of examples. I'll be taking a lot of company names, and I just want to clarify that I'll be using that only for educational purposes, and I'm not an affiliate of any of those companies. I'm not here to say anything bad or against those company names. So we are going to use them just for educational and understanding purposes, right? All right. With that, I also have the last thing. Some of the slides have the tips at the very bottom of the slide. So keep an eye out for them. Not every slide has the tips, but that should help you out going forward. All right. The first question I would like to address is some of you, based on what Neil said, some of you might be new to product management, and you might have this question of, I don't have product management experience, so how do I get into product management? And like Karen said, I myself was not a product manager to begin with. So here's why I'm here, and that's probably one of the reasons why they chose me to talk to you guys, right? So this is a quick overview of my journey, of my career so far. I've had other roles as well, but just to consolidate and get to the point of with these roles. So you can see that I started off as a network engineer, and then I moved on to pre-sales, and then I became a technical leader, and then finally moved into product management, right? So if I tell you my story this way, you would probably think that, you know, I might got lucky, or I'm not sure how this guy got a product management role. So, and even when I was trying for product management role, that was one of the key thing I had. How do I, express myself, and how do I tell to my interviewers that I'm a good candidate for product management, right? But what I did was I looked at it from a different perspective. So now, when I was a network engineer, I was designing solutions, and I got exposed to the enterprise market. And then when I was in pre-sales, I started selling solutions. So this was again focusing with customers on retail, healthcare, and IT. When I was technical leader, I started supporting those solutions, especially for the customers in data center and service provider. And then when I became product manager, I started building the solution, specifically for customers in IoT domain, customers in manufacturing, utilities, and transportation. So now, if you look at this journey, right, you will see that there's an end-to-end connectivity, a connection. So I stitched this story in a way that I've been in this whole life cycle of designing, selling, and supporting solutions. So the only thing that's missing in my portfolio is building. So that is the reason why you should take me in, right? Because of my vivid experience from the past. So what I would highly encourage you all is to look at your situation differently, look at it from a higher perspective, and see how you can connect all the dots, right? And you should own your own story. And there's no start or end to this life cycle. And I believe product management is one of those jobs or job titles that is very versatile. And as you will see me talk about all these things through the slides, product management is something that affects our life, even day-to-day life, right? So there's no specific answer on why you want to be product manager, or I don't have an experience, how can I get into product management? You already have that in your resume. You just have to see it from a different perspective, right? Right. With that, I'll move on to the next slide. So now you might have asked me a question. I don't have end-to-end experience that I talked about, the whole life cycle of the product, right? So I started off with designing, then selling, then supporting, and then ended up in building. Then that doesn't matter, right? Because again, if you look at my career from those positions, it was all mainly into engineering, right? So that's what I want to highlight here with this diagram here. So As you can see, a product manager, in my role, at my current role at Cisco, I interface with all these different team members, whether it's in sales, licensing, marketing, on the outbound activities perspective, or with program management, customer support, or engineering from the inbound activities perspective, right? And you will see roles that straight away call out, we need outbound PM, right? Or this position is for outbound PM, or this position is for inbound. So from that perspective, you don't need to have complete end-to-end experience. For example, to get into product management, you could become a product sales specialist, and that might be your stepping stone, right? Or you could be a licensing product manager, right? And all of these are roles for which you will find jobs online. You could be product marketing manager, right? Or some companies now have technical PMs or technical product managers. Cisco has something called engineering product managers. So you don't have to be an expert in all of this. And let's be honest, I haven't seen anybody who is an expert in all of these domains and then they became a product manager, right? So you can use those different things as your stepping stone and getting into the product management. All right, with that, I have my third slide for this section and the last one. So this one talks about what are the different phases of product management. So it might seem very overwhelming when I told you in my previous slide that I work with all these different teams and I interface with them. So you might, somebody who is new to this, they might think that it's a complex and pretty demanding position. But like all other jobs, there are different phases in product management, and I've broken it down into 3 different phases, right? Somebody who's now starting into product management, they would start at implementation phase. So this is where you would really start to understand your product, your customers, their pain points, right? You would understand your competition, you would understand your market. So at this phase, you're just being told what to work on, right? And most likely you're just putting in these features on different tools or interfacing with other guys to make sure your day-to-day business is running. This is the first phase, right? This is how you would enter product management. The next phase, which I call a strategizing phase, is somewhere where like usually a senior product manager to a director is probably those are the guys that are in this phase. And again, I'm not saying these these points are specific to these different phases. These can be seen or worked upon at different phases. Hello? Someone had a question?
Hear you. We can hear you.
No, I think you can go ahead. I think that was just somebody joining the group.
All right. So again, my point is majority, these are the different phases where you can group these things. And this is how you would progress through your product management career. So in the second phase, that's where you will really start to understand how to prioritize things. And prioritizing is not easy, right? It might sound very easy, but trust me, it's not easy at all. So prioritizing features or prioritizing expectations or ability to convince others with all the factual data, right? Or creating value for your customers and for your business. So those are some of the things that you would do in the strategizing phase. And this is where usually senior product manager to a director would take care of all these things. The next phase is the visionary phase. And this is, I personally feel like this is the main phase or the last phase of the product management where you would really start to think about things from end to end, right? And again, all of this is pretty easy, but implementing it in the job and thinking that way is what really elevates you from a product manager at the entry level to all the way to senior or beyond that. And that's where in the visionary phase, this is where you would understand the end-to-end picture. You would start to understand when to come up with a feature that would take you or that would represent you as a leader in the industry versus when do you want to be trailing. What are some of the disruptive solutions that you want to bring in and how that would affect your entire portfolio, right? And this is something that would affect your company. And so that is the visionary phase. Now, in all of this, again, to keep it simple, right? What I've seen 50 to 80% of the times, what works is these 4 things in the bottom, right? And that's my tip for this slide. The first one is quote sense. So you can put in anything between those quotes. You can think of it as common sense. You can think of it as product sense. You can think of it as customer sense. But that is truly what matters. Like you need to be able to sense your environment, your products that you're working with, your situation, right? Your colleagues. If you do that, I mean, I would say 20, 30% of your job is already done. Right? And the next thing is the clear communication. So as a product manager, it's very important for you to have a clear and concise and communication, right, with all your partners. And then the effective collaboration. So as I was showing you in the previous slide, you would be working with a lot of people from different backgrounds, from different teams within the company. So you need to learn how to work with different people, right? Be effective in it. And finally, it all boils down to being disciplined, organized, or structured. So with product management, you'll get a lot of tasks, a lot of things that soon becomes overwhelming. So unless you're very disciplined about all of them and you have a structure, and you will see the structure that I'm talking about in some of the answers as well in the questions that we're going to look at going forward. But these are the 4 things I personally believe that if you have these 4, you're already a great candidate for product management. And even in your day-to-day job, if you have these 4 things, you would have already aced it by 50 to 60%. So here I'll take a pause and see if you guys have any questions so far. No questions? Okay.
There's one from Mamta, which is getting typed, Amith. So maybe in the meantime, you can share the next slide, and Mamta or anyone else who would like to ask any question can put it in the chat.
All right. Okay. So now we are getting into the details of the interview prep questions, right? So in the first 3 slides, I wanted to give you guys a high-level overview of product management without making it complex or complicated. Now we'll get into the interview questions, some of the questions that you might face or you might get asked in your interviews. The way I've divided these questions is, again, tying back to my journey or the life cycle of the product, right? So you would first conceptualize your product, that's the building part, and then you would design it. So you would architect it, work with the engineering team and all of that. So you would come up with the working solution. And then you sell your product, and then you finally support that product. That's post-selling, right? So I've kept the whole cycle into these 4 different things that, again, tying back to my first slide on my experience and my journey. And these questions are also related to these different sections of those journey or the life cycle, right? So in this slide, we'll be looking at questions like, how would you design your product? Like, what are the things that you need to consider when designing a product? Why would you design a product, right? So that's the strategy question. And then once you've designed it and once you have a product that's shipped out in the field, what if something doesn't work? What would you do with them, right? So those are some of the questions that would test you, your building solutions or your idea of like how a product should be built and how would you design it. Now, some of these questions were asked to me when I was giving interviews, and some of them are the ones that I've come up with. I'll be picking one of these questions and going in detail about the framework on how you should address or answer those questions. But for now, I'll just read some of the questions, right? And tell you what was the reason behind I put those questions in here. So the first one is designing YouTube for astronauts in space station, right? And for any sane person, this might feel absurd. I mean, why would you put YouTube in a space for astronauts? I mean, they're not going to sit there and see reels about how to lose weight or how to make more money using stock in the stock market and so on. So why would somebody need YouTube, right? So the question here is trying to understand how would you come up with the points that would relate to the use cases of the astronauts. So it's intentionally put this way so that you see the complexity or you get focused more on the question why versus actually coming up with an answer. The next question is like designing a product for product managers. So this is another question where like you might think like what's going on here, right? Building a car for a disabled person. Why would a disabled person drive a car is the first thought, but you should really understand what do we mean by disabled, right? So again, breaking down in all these questions is the way to answer them. and designing a feature in TikTok for volunteering, right? So those are some of the design questions. Now, in terms of strategy, we might say like, why is Sony building a car, right? I mean, like Sony, as we all know, is a gaming company. They're into producing movies, and they're into games and all of that, and phones. Why would they build a car, right? Again, the idea behind here is to understand how do you see the business, right? And in majority of these cases, I'll show you in the next slide that as overwhelming as this whole thing sounds, it is actually not when you really break it down, right? And it again goes back to my philosophy of product management is in our life. We have all these big problems, and the way you solve those big problems is by breaking them into chunks, right? And now if you look at the improvement questions, like, how would you improve traffic experience in Bay Area? And at least the folks here in Bay Area know how bad it is, the traffic, especially during the peak hours. So how would you improve your traffic experience, and so on, right? Again, like I said, the way to address all these questions is if you can break down those questions into smaller chunks that you can tackle about. You cannot give an answer for the entire, the whole different possibilities that exist. So you need to break it down and focus on one specific possibility. All right. So I'll take a pause after I explain this slide. So that would conclude this section, and I can address those questions, the questions you guys had before. So how would you answer some of those questions? So here I've taken an example of designing a smart bulb for Cisco, right? Again, the reason why I've taken the smart bulb example is because at the end, I will share my answer, the complete answer, with the folks here, Minu and Karen, and they can discuss with you guys later on. But I'll try to keep my framework to that question so you can relate to it later on when you guys discuss internally, right? Designing a smart bulb for Cisco. How would you do it? So the way I would approach it is, one, you need to have a structure. So, do you have a question?
No, it was a background noise. Continue.
So the way you address this question is, again, having a structure. So this is my structure that I use, and I feel it works for me. This might or might not work for you, but nonetheless, when you go answer these questions, you need to have a structure in your mind, right? The first thing I would want you guys to do is clarify or understand the question in detail. So, for example, when we talk about smart bulb, in this case, the clarifying questions would be, is this for indoor or is this for outdoor, right? Or is this for commercial use case or is this for residential use case? And within commercial, there are different segments that you can go to, right? And what are the geography that you want to target? So those are some of the clarifying questions. And you might not have all the questions, but at least you need to state your assumptions on what is the foundation through which you're going to build your answer. So that is very important. So you need to talk about understand your question and ask for the clarifications. The next thing is the question why. Why would, in this case, Cisco want to build a smart bulb, right? This is very important, and this is how you would derive the goal. And goal is what matters. That is the sole reason why you would do anything, right? So to understand that, you need to first understand where this company, in this the Cisco company, Cisco is in this whole smart bulb business. How would it matter, right? So you need to do a SWOT analysis, like strengths, weakness, opportunities and threats and all of that, to understand where does Cisco land in all of this, and then try to understand how the product smart bulb ties into the goal of the company, right? And then through that you derive what is the goal of this product, the smart bulb. So it's very important for you to understand why you want to build it, right? So once you decided why you want to build it, the next thing is, who do you want to build it to, right? Who are your customers? So that is another key thing for you to understand. And again, if you see from clarifications to motivation to user prioritization, like I said, initially we looked at indoor versus outdoor, commercial versus residential. And now let's say we want to go with commercial, then you again look into whether you want to get into data centers, you want to get into retails, you want to get into offices, you want to get into these warehouses and all of those industrial structures. And that's when you will try to you'll understand the whole ecosystem. Now, if you again break it down, for example, if you get into data centers, you have customers, their lighting needs are different. They don't need bright lights, right? Their energy consumption, they want to track all of that. We are talking about thousands of lights that remain up for a long period of time, day and night, across different sites. So you will understand the pain points. That is what's required in the feature prioritization, the next section. So in the feature prioritization, you need to focus on what is it that you want to solve. Like I was telling you guys, like how would a person in data center monitor all these bulbs, the energy consumption, and what is the goal for them? Like it's not just having fancy lights in data centers, right? Why would somebody use the lights in data centers, and what are the things that they're trying to get out of it? So that's how you would prioritize your features in the feature section. And then finally, you would pick one of those features and then provide a solution. So every one of those features, you can have your solution built in different ways. So you need to prioritize how do you want to build it. So then you come up with your roadmap. You'll have your MVP. This is what you want to go with. And then you'll have your MVP +1. So that's your roadmap. So through this, you can see that I took a very generic question on design a smart bulb for Cisco into a very specific product, reaching out to specific users, addressing their specific needs. Right? That's how, again, you break down the problem and focus on the specific needs of that issue. And that's how you should answer the question. All right, I'll take a pause here for any questions. I know I've been talking a lot. This is probably too much for you guys, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to clarify.
No, this has been really great, Amith. Thank you. And I think we do have some questions. I'm just going back here to see. Oh gosh, we have quite a few questions. Okay. We first have one from Ranjana asking, what past experience would the recruiter be looking for when hiring returners for product management? That's just.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. And again, that's something that I was trying to address previously as well. So what matters to the recruiters is how are you applying your past experience and presenting yourself and telling them that you could solve the problems that their company has, right? They're not looking for, like, again, especially in an entry role, they're not looking for previous product management experience per se, but they're looking for how do you articulate yourself in a situation where, like, you have to solve some of the problems for their company, whether it might be coming up with these new products or supporting them. And like I said, all your experience that you have, I took my experience in engineering and told my recruiters or interviewers that I have my experience in designing and supporting. And that goes a long way in the overall product lifecycle, because you need, as a product manager, you need to understand end to end, right? And not just building the products, but also sustaining them, supporting them, and finally doing an end of life of those products. So be very specific and be creative in explaining yourself that you do fit the bill.
Great. And then we've got one from Mamta. She was an SSE in her previous role and now on a career break and trying to pivot to product management. She's wondering if she should tailor her resume for PM roles, showing her past experience in SSE implementation. And I guess she's referring to, I guess she's thinking maybe she can refer to the implementation phase that you had mentioned.
Just for clarification, when Mamta says SSE, it's Solution Support Engineer. Is that what she means?
Let's see, Mamta, are you on?
Oh, hi, this is Mamta here.
Hey, Mamta.
Hi, thank you so much for, this insightful presentation you're giving so far. So I was actually a senior software engineer front end.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I'll just turn on.
Sure. All right. So again, from the first thing that I would say, because you brought up a point that there was a break in your career, and especially now, even when we are looking at candidates, we see these breaks showing up quite often. Whether it might be due to COVID, it might be due to the layoffs that we're all seeing in the market. it's not so easy to get back and get a job after a layoff, especially in this current conditions. So from that perspective, I would say from your past experience to now, you should not worry too much about your break. Other than that, I would say maybe show what you are doing in the meantime to upgrade yourself or upskill yourself for the role that you're going to apply for. The second point, from being a software engineer, going into product management. Again, I would say you already working as a front-end developer, you already have that knowledge of how the product works, what are some of the who are some of the customers and their pain points and problems. So pivoting from there to product management is not going to be an easy one. Like obviously it's a domain change, but at the same time, I would encourage you to be open in accepting, if you really want to get into product management, in accepting maybe entry-level positions, right? Or maybe positions where like you might not get hands-on, full-on product management role. Like I was saying, maybe an engineering product manager, or maybe product management that's very specific to, let's say, support. So you should be open to those roles as well, and you can take those as your stepping stones and getting into the actual product management.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, because I was really confused actually, because I know it's a big, transition from being senior software engineer to a PM. But I think you have just clarified everything in my mind, that how I should actually enter into the job market, considering all these options which you have mentioned. So thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah, and the reason I mentioned about being open about entry-level positions is because you are a senior software engineer already. So not everybody is willing to give away that senior title when they're changing the domain. So that's why I wanted to clarify that you should be okay for entry-level jobs.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you. And one last question. I've been actually enrolled myself for this IBM product management course on Coursera. So which I've been doing it, and I can, like whatever you are mentioning here. So what I have studied so far, I can relate to it. And I think, do you think it's the right direction actually for me?
In terms of the course, or in terms of the...
I mentioned that, I mentioned that I've been taken this IBM product management course actually. So do you think so it will help me actually to get it into the market?
So again, from my perspective, as long as you're reading any of these or taking any of these courses or reading any of the materials specific to product management, it would certainly help. But if your question is calling out or saying that IBM specific product management course or like some other course, that itself, I personally feel has not much of an impact, other than the fact that you're not sitting quiet, you're upskilling yourself, you're putting your effort in all of these things. So I would encourage you to continue to do it. And that would really help you in product management interviews.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. It was just one course certification. I just want to mention it. So I just wanted to know whether, I'm going in the right direction or not. So that was the question.
Yeah. You can definitely mention that. Like I said, I personally don't know what that course is, but you're doing the right thing.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. One more question before I move on to the next slide.
Okay, the next one that we had was regarding the phases that you mentioned in your slide. How would a product manager know who takes the decision on certain strategies? It is generally very difficult in big organizations.
Yes. So that's why one point to clarify is like there is no specific or like there are no bounds that the decisions are always taken at the top level and the product managers, or at the entry level, you might not have anything to do with the product. That is not the case in all the organizations or in all instances or scenarios. But generally speaking, the strategies and all of that, what I have seen in my career and in my experience, it trickles down from top to bottom, right? Eventually, you will grow as a product manager. You will build that credibility. You will build that knowledge and acumen. And that's when you'll be ready to take those decisions. And when you have those capabilities, you will know, and people around you will recognize them as well. So to answer your question, usually it comes top to bottom. It might be either your leaders or your senior product managers or even higher up. All right. I hope I answered that question. So I'll move on in the interest of time to the next slide. Okay. So the next set of questions that I want to share with you guys is on supporting or sustaining the solutions that you've built, right? Also, there is a little bit of building part as well in here, but mainly this is all about once you built your product, how would you prioritize features, or how would you analyze changes in the behavior and so on. So the first set of questions is the goal setting questions. Like I was explaining in my previous slide, goal is the key thing that you need to consider when you're answering a question. Without mentioning goals, your answer would be pretty open, like pretty vague, pretty generic. So you need to be very clear on the goals. So some of the questions that I've put in here is, what should be the goal for Tesla, right? Or for the WBW, I have to bring them back on my conversation. So what metrics should they be focusing on, right? From WBW perspective. Or in the metric change, again, you can think about, again, I've put in an example from Rivian cars. Why do you think their orders are declining, right? Or what do you think would be the impact if I change the color or the font of Google Chrome, right? You might think it's very trivial. It's not that impactful, but it is not. When we see these UI, UX changes, every button, the size of the button, the placement, the colors, and where it lands in the whole the whole task completion phase, all of that matters a lot, right? Similarly, on the trade-off question, so this is again something that's very challenging. Wherein you need to set the right expectations that I was talking about in my phases slide as well. You should be able to prioritize your customer requirements versus, let's say, a bug, right? So for in here, I have another example, like if you're the PM for Google Gemini, how would you evaluate between boosting your ad revenue? Obviously, Gemini is something that I feel it's great, but there are no ads and a lot of people are using it for free. They now have the pro version. But what if you can monetize it by using ads, right? That's another thing. Versus, would that affect the people being retained on that platform, or would they jump to some other thing? So these are some of the things that you should consider as a product manager. And these are very frequently asked questions. It might not be the same question, but you would get asked something in the lines of these things, right? Again, in these questions, the tip here I want to provide is one, focus on the goal. Second, focus on metrics. So these type of questions, the only way you can tackle them is by metrics. So metrics is basically a quantifiable or financial data point that you would make use of to make your decisions, right? So that's one of the tip here, right? Now, how would I answer some of the questions? So here for this example, I've taken how would you prioritize, right? In the third category, the trade-off, I explained you how would you prioritize between customer requirement versus software bug. And so from that perspective, again, sticking to my smart bulb example, if there is a dashboard for the smart bulb to see all the metrics, usage reports, and energy usage, and all of that, how would you do a release planning for that, right? So in here, what I've done is I've divided the whole release into different teams. So this is again one way that I've been doing it, and I feel it's a good approach to take, but it might be different for different people. So the way I look at all the features is what are we trying to do with this release, right? Are we trying to grow ourselves? Are we trying to acquire more customers, more users, which would in turn increase our revenue, right? The second thing is, are we trying to increase more engagement, right? That means, are we enhancing our existing features? Are we improving the features so that people start to like our product even more and we can retain them? And they would then be the referrers, right? Or do we want to make our product efficient so that you might have some backend bugs, you might have some backend optimization that you want to do so that your overall solution is fast or quick and efficient. So those are the three general categories that you always go with. And one thing to point out here is I haven't mentioned revenue, right? I told you that you can get more users, which in turn gives you revenue, but your goal should not be revenue. It's like, if I have to take an example, If you ask people like, what do you want in your life? And if you say money, then that is not the right thing. I mean, you're actually in your mind, you have things about what money can buy you. So that's what you should be focusing on rather than just money. So similarly here, the outcome is not revenue, but if you get user acquisition, that would in turn turn it into revenue. So you should focus on those things rather than just revenue. So once you have those themes, you then break it down into categories, right? So now again, in here, I've put in like must have, good to have, nice to have. So that's how I would divide features within those themes. So for must have, from the user acquisition perspective, the way you would put it in each of these buckets, you can consider like any of these features, how much would be your TAM, right? Total addressable market. Would that move the needle in that area? Or what would be the customer category that's willing to spend on this feature? What would be the frequency that they'll be using this, right? From the user engagement and product optimization perspective, in those categories of must have, good to have, and nice to have, I would look at something called a HEART framework, right? Which is how will the customers be happy with this feature, right? Will your NPS score or CSAT increase because of this? Your task completion rate, would that be reduced, right? Or would it be more successful? Your engagement, would that increase, right? Or retention and all of that. So that's something that you should consider and prioritize. You can score all of these, and accordingly, you can group them into different categories. Once you do that, the next you move on to the features. Now, as you probably know, majority of you guys who are working, who have previous experiences, you will see that a feature can span multiple releases, right? It all depends on the effort. So the way I would look at this is, again, break down those features into, or initiatives into features, multiple features, and then you prioritize those features, right? And the way you would prioritize them, I use a framework called RICE. Again, I would rank them based on the reach, impact, the effort, and the confidence I have in all of my calculation. And based on that, you can prioritize your features, right? So that's how you would plan. Again, this is just a framework. If you're taking an interview, you can take a real example if you're experienced. If not, you can use this framework so that at least the interviewer will understand that you're breaking down the releases into different themes, categories, and initiatives and features, right? And due to the time, I'll not take questions now. I would like to continue, but please keep putting those questions on the chat. I'll try to address them at the end, right? So the next set of questions that I'll be talking about is on the selling side. This is purely selling. So this is where you'd be focusing on the marketing related questions, the pricing questions, and then the launching questions, right? So some of the things that I've put in here in the marketing is basically one, the interviewer would like to know, how do you sell the product, or like, how do you analyze the product, right? So from that perspective, I've put in like, what is your favorite product? Although it might be a very simple question, they would like to understand, how do you differentiate, or how do you value the features of the product, or how do you see the product in your day-to-day life and the impact that it's causing in your life, right? So that's how you would sell yourself, or you would talk about your product. The other one is on the market strategy, like Kava, how should be Kava's market strategy to become, or what should be Kava's market strategy to become next Chipotle? I mean, they're already in the race. They're doing great, but what do you think from your perspective that they should be doing? From the pricing perspective, I've talked about, like, let's say your Netflix PM and Amazon Prime has just increased the subscription fee. You know, how do you assess the situation and so on? From the launching, again, trying to intimidate the interviewee. So I would say launch a 90s style stereo speaker, right? I mean, just from the fact that I say 90s, you already, most of the guys would be like, how can I do it? I mean, nobody would buy 90s style now, right? But that is a trick question. Again, we want to understand your thought process and how do you make things work, right? Again, the important thing here is this is how, again, I tie product management back to our life. Consider how you purchased a recent item in your life, right? And think of the process, like how did you narrow it down among all the alternatives, and how did you make the decision? So that helps. From the example perspective, again, I'm talking about, I'll be sticking to the pricing for the Cisco smart bulb. What I've put in here is a framework that is a partial answer for this question. The complete answer is in the slides or in the collateral that I'll be sharing with Minu and Karen. From the pricing perspective, again, the first thing is you need to understand your competition, right? So you need to understand where you stand in the market. And then you need to understand this whole buying behavior, like how do your customers buy? Basically, it all starts with the need, right? You wouldn't buy something without a need. And then what do they do after they realize that they need this product? Where do they go to, right? How do they evaluate between the alternatives? What is their purchasing behavior? What is the key decision or factors that they look at? So once you understand that, then I usually get into the marketing for piece, which is the product, promotion, place, and price. So you need to understand what is your product, what is the value your product giving to the customers. Where would you promote your product? How would you basically attract your customers? Where do you want to again go to in terms of the place? And pricing is very key, right? Pricing, I cannot stress enough that although most of the times it often gets overlooked, but this is the last thing that you would do even in your life, right? Before buying a product. No matter how much I sell, end of the day, if the pricing doesn't meet your budget, you would not buy it. So with all of this information, you then go into the pricing the product. Like how would you price your product? Like how much your customer is willing to pay? So you need to know that. For that, are you going to stick to cost plus pricing? So in here, you're basically looking at your margins, and then you're pricing more than, or you're basically increasing your margins. In value pricing, you're looking at what is the value add that your product is delivering to the customers. In competitive pricing, you're looking at your competition and pricing accordingly. And in experimental pricing, you know that you're probably only vendor, and then you want to go in and see how the pricing and the customer reacts for your pricing. And finally, how do they consume? So pricing is one piece, and often pricing is contemplated with licensing, or it goes with licensing as well. So because that's how you consume. So you again, majority of the things now you'll see that it's all subscription driven. So you need recurring revenue for your company. So you have all these different options on how you could license the product after pricing has been done. Right? All right. The next thing I have, the next set of questions, and this is the last set of questions. This is again going to be part designing, part selling solutions, but this is kind of catch-all bucket. So in here, you would get asked about your regular leadership or behavioral questions. And I believe this is probably the easiest one that you should all be ready all the time. Next is the analytical or estimation questions. Again, this is very much into that common sense thing that I talked about. Although this might seem very overwhelming, it is actually not. It just the interviewer wants to see how do you think or how do you break down such a big problem, right? Nobody is looking for exact answers in these questions. They just want to understand your approach, right? How do you face such problems? For example, some of the things like related to the smart bulb that we were talking about, people might ask you, what is the market size for the bulbs, right? Or how many bulbs do you think there are in US, right? And my sister took Air India yesterday or day before. So I put in a question, what percentage of passengers who take flights use Air India, right? Something like this. Again, although it might be very overwhelming, the key thing here is it is not. You just need to break down that question. Use majority of it is just common sense. And like I said, you should be ready for such questions any given point of time when you're preparing for product management. And I believe these are the easiest questions that you can be prepared and you can ace the interview. Now, how would I address these questions? So the first, this is something that you should all do. Create that table. These are some very frequently asked questions, right? Give me an example of your leadership, about your influence, because as a product manager, you will not have direct reportees. So how would you do it and so on? Similarly on our accomplishments, then you have teamwork, success, challenges, and all of that. And I would think about two examples on my current position and one example from my previous position, right? Have this ready all the time. And the way you would respond to these questions after you have built those examples is the key thing here is you need to connect with the interviewer, right? So you need to make sure your interviewer nods his head and says, yeah, I've been there, or I understand what you're saying, right? And for that, your examples have to be pretty real, right? And pretty unique to what you've really faced. The way I would respond to those questions is first, keep it concise, give a brief introduction about what is this all about? What is the situation? Who are the people that are involved in your example? And then talk about the problem. And here you should highlight why this problem was a big deal for you, right? And then the solution. Again, the key thing here is focus on what you did rather than what was done by your entire team, right? How did you impact for this problem? Then again, the impact, which talks about what was the changes in terms of situation and problem after the solution. And finally, the result. The result talks about the outcome at the very end. I mean, at the end of this whole example, what was the outcome, right? How did it improve, or like what happened and what happened down the lane? How do you ensure that in the future this wouldn't happen, or like this in these instances you would get appreciated and so on. So that's the framework that I would use. All right, with that, we're coming to an end. So these are my resources that I feel are very helpful if you're preparing for your product management interview. So in here, the first, I put in some channels on YouTube. They're all free. You could go subscribe to their channels, or maybe look at the videos of their channels. They keep posting pretty new videos on how to answer some of these questions. And then I have online courses. I think like Mamta was saying, you have Coursera, Udacity, Udemy, and all of these places where you can take some of the courses. Anything you do towards product management is obviously helpful in your interviews. Then the interview prep. Again, here I would like to highly recommend I Got an Offer. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with this website, but they have a ton of free content, and they have interview preps specific to companies, right? And what are they expecting, and how would they expect you to answer the questions? So that is something that I highly recommend. You also have PRAMP and interviewing.io. Even I Got an Offer, like you can pay and then take mock interviews, right? And the other thing is I would highly recommend you to make use of your social network on LinkedIn, approach some of the product managers, ask them to be your mentor, build that relationship. Or maybe you go to a product school, build that network over there, work with your peers. Go attend some of the meetups. You guys are already doing this in WBW. You have the product SIG or SIG group. So you have that community, and then maybe attend product cons. So those are some of the things I would recommend you guys to take care of from the networking perspective. From the books, I read very less books, so I want to be honest, but at the same time, I understand books provide a ton of information. And these are some of the very few books that I've read, and I really liked it, right? And I hope you would like it as well. And finally, the last thing I have is this material that I've provided to Minu and Karen. So it goes in detail about how I have responded, or how I would go about coming up with the smart bulb for Cisco, using all the frameworks and things that we discussed so far, right? It discussed about licensing, it discussed about pricing, the markets that I would approach, the user types, and all of that. So if you want to know more about it, join the meetup that's coming up, and you guys can discuss that. And finally, the key takeaway from this session, right? I think at the beginning, at the introduction, I think someone said that if you're not into product management, then you don't have to worry about product management or something like that. So the key thing I want to say here is, at least for me, product management applies to our day-to-day life, right? It's all about our mindset. And you can see product management questions and examples pretty much everywhere and anywhere, right? As simple as I was trying to buy Tonal. It's a home gym equipment, exercise equipment. Even for that, you think about pricing, you think about subscription, you think about the value that you get from that, and you think about reliability of the product. How would you get support? What is the resale and all of that? So I feel over the period of time, if you spend enough time in product management, you will become a product manager inherently in your life. And I'm very happy that I can relate to that. And end of the day, it's all fun. I hope you guys also see it that way. And finally, I would recommend you to own your own story and tell your own story. This is how I see product management. So this is from my perspective. And I'm sure you all have your own story, your own way and experience of explaining what product management is. And own up to it and then tell your own story. Right? That I'm done with my presentation. So my bad if I ran through some of the slides at the very end, but I have 1 minute, or I can stay longer if you want, and I can take questions now.
Yeah, and I think one of the main questions was someone asked if your presentation was going to be shared.
Yes, sure. I mean, if it helps, I can share it with you guys, and you can share it with the members in your when you meet up or with your community. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, it was very excellent. I know we're going to have to let you go. My clock says 1 o'clock. We did have a bunch of other questions, but we can, possibly just send them to you if you want to give a quick answer, or get them.
So I have a few more minutes. So if
you have a few more minutes, okay. Okay, because I definitely want to be respectful of your time. Okay, well, Ramya sent a question. She worked as a business analyst with about 50% of her responsibility focused on building analytics dashboards to automate manual reporting and reducing reporting efforts by over 80%. How would she position herself to land PM interviews with having that experience and title?
Yeah, so if I have to pick 2 tools for my work, I would pick one PowerPoint, another one is Excel. So a lot of work goes in crunching data and getting those numbers and reporting it to leadership and for our business. And that's how you move your products, right, and make those decisions. And like I also previously said, metrics are also built around those numbers. You need numbers. You have to quantify, and you should be able to measure. So that's a great skill to have. If you already have that experience, build around it, right? So I would recommend you to position yourself as somebody who's analytical, who's a strategic thinker, and highlight your capabilities on identifying metrics and measuring them and how that contributed to the success of the product. And so that's how you should approach it.
And I think that kind of answers Maruk's question, where she had mentioned about how to elaborate her previous project manager experience to elaborate on like how that will align with product management. So I think that kind of answers that question. We will go to another question. I think the next one. So there is this, can someone from marketing background or a sales domain get into product management?
Yes. So
Yes.
I told you guys before that there are positions like product marketing manager, and then there is a role like product sales specialist. If not directly to product management, you can obviously get into these roles. This becomes a stepping stone into getting into product management. But a lot of it goes in on how to attract customers. How do you approach customers? Because your job is not just to build products. You want to generate revenue out of it, and you want to help your customers also meet their needs. So for that, your sales and marketing experience matters a lot. So
that's right. Yep. Thank you. Just let us know whenever you are like, done. We will stop.
I'm fine. I'm very happy that I'm here, and I want to answer as many questions as.
Sure.
Minu, do we want to go back there? Ramya had
I know there
another
was, another question. So I was like, okay, I'll answer at least for everybody one question. Then if we have time, we'll go back to Ramya's second question. So Tanvi was next. She had like, I have program management experience in ERP space, and I believe lifecycle of a project is more or less similar to that of a product. Would that perspective help in tailoring my resume to cater to PM roles?
Yeah, so with program management, you're already working with a lot of different team members, right? You're keeping up with your milestones. You divide up your project into all these tasks. So you have that experience built in. And regardless of which project or which product you worked on, end of the day, if you look at the life cycle, it's all the same. You have to ideate, you have to come up with the concept, you have to get that approved, and then you need to work with engineering, and then get it implemented, then look at sales and support. So you don't have to have all 4 of those, but anything that you're working in, I'm pretty sure you can put in one of these buckets. So with program management, with your experience, you already have that collaboration effort that is required. So you can highlight those things and also talk more about how you divided up large tasks into actionable items and milestones and how you collaborated with other team members.
And believe me or not, I had done exactly the same thing. I was a program manager and I moved into product management because literally they're like two sides of the coin. One side is dealing actually with the customer directly, client directly, and you're taking in requirements and everything. And the program manager actually taking in those requirements and getting it implemented, getting it actually done with your team, with the engineering team. So definitely, yeah. Can anyone go next?
Yeah, I'm just looking for the next question. Maybe I'll go back to Ramya's. The chat is getting very long. Okay, Ramya had also asked, how many iterations would you typically see in building a product? MVP, MVP plus one, and on? Is there a sweet spot that your stakeholders would be happy with?
No, I mean, first of all, you need to have more than MVP, right? You need to have MVP plus one, plus two, plus three. That is your roadmap. Usually in my line of work, if you're managing a software, depending on the release cycle, so if you have a 4-month release cycle, then we would generally go for 3 to 4 releases in a roadmap that we would like to show with the field and also want to track internally. If you're working on a hardware cycle or hardware product, usually the life cycle, I mean, the release cycles for that are much longer. So you would usually go to 3 to 5 years from that perspective. So having MVP plus one, plus two, there's no sweet spot. The more you have, it's good that you're organized, but I would not focus beyond these iterations that I talked about. For software, it's usually 1.5 years, and for software, it's 3 to 5 years.
Okay, Minu, do you have another one?
Yeah, I think I don't have a name for it. It says iPhone. I got hired for a BA role leading a product team of about 15, and my work typically is the same as PMs do. We as BAs, business analysts in the company, are asked to think and work like PMs. Prior to my career break, I was a senior PM with 7 years of experience, but my ultimate goal is to get a PM role. Recruiters advise that it's okay to put product manager as my current role, since I do the work of a PM, even on the organization there where my title is BA. I'm interviewing now. Do I need to explain that my current title is BA and not PM? You should,
this is,
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, so this is where like there are some leeway, like some kind of things that you can go towards, like stretch yourself and say what you are and what you're working on. But I would say maybe on the resume, you can still put the title, but when you're talking to the recruiters or maybe the interviewer, you can say that you're taking in product management responsibilities or those things. But I would not do the other way around, like, put product management on your job title and
yeah, don't lie on the resume. Yep. Yeah. Thank you, Amith.
Okay, I think we have just one more question from Wan Yu. And Wan Yu, I see you turned your camera on. Do you want to ask, or would you like me to ask for you?
Hi, I just wonder if for a product manager role, is it easy or possible to switch the industry from like a financial industry to software or industry, pharmaceutical or others?
Yeah, I mean, just to clarify your question, you're already a product manager in let's say, financial domain, and now you want to switch to, let's say, technical domain as a product manager. So like I was explaining in my slides, product management is all about mindset. And I personally, I've never worked in industrial IoT space before. So manufacturing, transportation, none of that I got exposure to, right? But then the process is all the same, whether you're in finance, the other lady was talking about ERP platform, right? Or it's a hardware that I'm building for routers at Cisco, right? The process remains the same. Domain knowledge does help a lot, especially when you're applying for a senior level position. But at an entry-level position, I don't think it should matter that much, as long as you can highlight the facts, what you did, and all of that. Because like I said, in those buckets, in those phases, as a regular entry-level product manager, you're in the implementation phase. So you're learning the markets, you're trying to understand your competition, your customers. So over there, you're basically the decisions trickle down from top to bottom. So you should be okay. But as you grow into the senior level and all of that, it's more of having the domain experience, if not articulating how you were able to do it in different instances, and showing that vision. That's what matters.
Okay, thank you so much.
Fantastic. And I think that was the last question that we see. So thank you so much, Amith. I think this was such a great session and very insightful and helpful. We had a great crowd, and we are very grateful that you joined us today.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Thanks to everybody. And I hope you all get into the product management. Like I said, we do need more women in product management. From my personal experience, I see very few of them at my work and other places. So I hope you all get into product management, and I hope you find this helpful. And if you do need any help, or like if you want me to come back and talk to you guys again on any of the topics, I'm very happy to do it. Again, like I said, I'm very happy that I'm part of this. I'm happy that I'm helping you guys in some way or the other. Thanks.
And I think we're
Can
going to do a photo
just,
right now.
yeah, just a moment to take a screenshot. Can I request all the ladies to turn on your cameras, please? Okay. Okay, I'm gonna turn on as well. Okay, smile. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shraddha. Thank you once again,
Thank
Amith.
you.
And thank you, Karen and Mino, for moderating this. I think this was one of the best sessions for product management.
Yes,
So we
definitely.
continue and encourage more such sessions. And Amith, feel free to come in, I think, at least once in a quarter according to your schedule. We all loved it, and you made it so interesting with, running through examples. So really great to have you and drawing us through the insightful experience today. Looking forward for some upcoming more sessions in product management. So please stay tuned with us for more updates. And thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you, everybody.
You guys.
All right, bye.